March of the Machine is here, and with it comes the multiverse fighting back the tide of the Phyrexian invasion. Even the time-displaced Knights of Zhalfir come out of their pocket universe to the heroic rescue, as seen in the Cavalry Charge Precon. This white, blue, and black Precon features the face legend Sidar Jabari of Zhalfir, a 4-mana human knight. This 4/3 is the return of Eminence. When the Sidar is in the command zone or on the battlefield, if you attack with one or more knights, you draw a card and discard a card. Additionally, they have flying and first strike, and whenever you deal combat damage with Sidar Jabari, you can return a knight from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it's pretty plain and simple. We care about knights, and we're a reanimator deck. Good utility early game, allowing attacking knights to help us fill our graveyard, and utility late game in bringing knights back to fight for us. My concern is that this deck is barely blue. What I mean by that is, despite Sidar's color identity, there are only 10 blue cards in this entire deck, and of those 10 cards, 4 of them are brand new in this Precon. That's a waste of a color identity, and something I definitely want to make changes to the deck about. But as usual, Sidar Jabari is not the only legend in the box. No, we're also joined by the duo of Elenda and Azor. On their own, these two were already a force to be reckoned with, powerful in their own rights. But together, they're a 6-mana Vampire Knight Sphinx, and they are a 6/6 with flying and ward 2. Additionally, when we attack with Elenda and Azor, we can pay X, white, blue, black to draw X cards. And at the beginning of each end step, our opponents as well, we can pay 4 life. If we do, we create X 1/1 lifelinking knight creature tokens, where X is equal to the amount of cards we've drawn this turn. These two are way more interesting, though very, very mana intensive. Unless you use them more as a passive commander. See, that third ability doesn't require your commander to do anything, just be on the battlefield, and allows you to pay 4 life each and every turn. I think there's an interesting deck to be made with them that focuses on drawing cards on other players' turns and using your tokens to regain the potential loss of 4 life per turn. This can end up netting you a massive squad at the investment of no mana, all while creating blockers and ensuring you can untap with an overwhelming force. But before we take a look at the potential upgrade, make sure to hit all of those good buttons. Like, comment, and subscribe if you find this guide helpful. Real members of the crew ring the bell to never miss any of my brews. Of these two commanders, I definitely find Elenda and Azor more interesting. But warping the deck around them would require a much heavier update than just 10 cards, since currently every creature in the deck is a knight, and that wouldn't be necessary with Elenda and Azor at the helm. So we're going to keep Sidar Jabari as the commander, and lean into Knight Tribal. Where can we continue to improve this deck with minimal cuts and edits? I mentioned at the outset, but this deck makes very little use of its blue color identity out of the box. Most of the blue comes from new cards like Zarek Strobe Knight, a 3-mana human knight with flying and vigilance that taps to create a 2/2 white and blue knight with vigilance, but only if you've cast 2 or more spells this turn. This is an okay little role player, but nothing to write home about. In a Spellslinger deck, I guess he can do some work, but you could be getting 2/2 flyers on every spellcast with a Talrand Sky Summoner. The real upside is that he's a blue knight, I guess. We also have Vodalian Wave Knight, a 4-mana blue and white merfolk knight. This 3/3 says whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on each other merfolk and or knight you control. Now this one is really cool. An effect like Chasm Skulker, but for all of your creatures, is a huge payoff. This guy spending just a turn cycle out can be enough to end the game. Definitely a welcomed addition to merfolk or knight-based decks. There is also Herald of Hoofbeats, a very cool 4-mana 3/3 human knight. This creature brings back Horsemanship, a rare old ability that essentially makes creatures unblockable unless the blocking creature also has Horsemanship. Better, this knight gives all your other knights Horsemanship too. This is a 4-mana, your board is unblockable creature. It will 10,000% be kill on sight, so play it while your opponents are tapped out, and when you can alpha strike for the win. We also have the new Exsanguinary Cavalry. Believe it or not, this new Black Knight has nothing to do with the spell Exsanguinate. No, instead it's a 3-mana 2/3 Vampire Knight with Menace and Lifelink. And whenever a knight you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature and make a blood token. Remember blood? Well, it's back and on this card, and in Pog form. Ha! These little rummage pellets are handy utility, and this guy can make oodles of them. It doesn't say one or more knights deal combat damage to a player, so every knight that makes it through gets a counter and makes a blood. Not bad. Now we also have the new equipment Conjurer's Mantle. This white artifact equips for just a single mana and gives the equipped creature +1/+1 in Vigilance. Not a bad return to begin with. But it gets better. Whenever the equipped creature attacks, you get to look at the top 6 cards of your library and put a creature card that shares a type with it into your hand. For any tribal deck with white in its color identity, this is a must-have. The trigger happens on attack, not combat damage, and is a hefty little dig. Giving some creatures Vigilance reliably is a big boon too, so expect this card to have some legs. And maybe the best new card in the deck is Chivalric Alliance, a 2-mana white enchantment that reads, whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a card. In white. Wow! Additionally, you can pay 2 mana and discard a card to make a 2/2 white and blue knight with Vigilance. Turn those extra lands into extra bodies at instant speed. This is a really good card. Maybe the most straightforward, controllable card draw in white, and it makes bodies? I like this in any deck that's turning sideways, which is usually a lot of them. Something tells me it'll be a chase card from these precons. With the new cards covered, how are we upgrading this list? How are we making it a good knight-focused deck? Let's start with the cut. And we'll be starting by looking at the knights that can't get through for damage reliably. A lot of our triggers need our knights to connect, so any of them without evasion get shelved. Starting with the little guys like Falmar Knight, Corpse Knight, and Worthy Knight. I appreciate that these knights come down early and can start getting Sidar's Eminence ability triggering, but late game they do nothing. They don't have evasion, with Death Touch being not a good enough evasion, and they aren't going to be reanimation targets late game. Then let's also cut Hero of Bladehold, Arvad the Cursed, and Knight of the Black Rose. They all have their roles but aren't fulfilling them here. Our commander doesn't need to be any bigger, just evasive, and 5 mana for a 4/4 that gets you the Monarch is hardly a good return in a deck that has blue in its color identity but isn't using it. I'd also like to cut Path of the Enigma, Fractured Power Stone, and Ichor Elixir. These cards all have to do with Plane Chase, and while this round of precons does come with Plane Chase cards, the number of games you'll actually play with Plane Chase is minimal, and it's not worth impacting your deck's construction. The last card I want to cut is Promise of Loyalty. This 5 mana enchantment is a board wipe that also prevents the remaining creatures from attacking you, but we want to do something potentially more exciting for 5 mana while wiping the board reliably. I think this card misses the mark. So with 10 cards cut, what are we adding in? Simply, evasion and card draw. We want our knights to be connecting, whether it be one at a time or all at once, so anything we include that gets them there is where our replacements will be. Steel of the Godhead is a good place to start. As an aura, it can enchant a creature to give it +1/+1 and lifelink if it's white, or +1/+1 and unblockable if it's blue, or both if the creature is both white and blue. This is a great way to make our knights able to get in for damage, especially Sidar Jabari, but also our other blue knights, or even give Elenda and Azor unblockable. If we want to absolutely be sure that our creatures are connecting, this is where we start. We could also include auras like Spirit Mantle and Unquestioned Authority. Both give the enchanted creature protection from creatures, meaning that it can't be blocked. Guaranteed combat damage. This triggers many of our effects, so ensuring we have some ways to connect with opponents is a must-have in this deck. With these extra auras in the list, we could be adding Armored Skyhunter, a 4 mana 3/3 flying cat knight who, on attack, lets us peek at the top 6 cards of our library and put an equipment or aura card from among them onto the battlefield attached to a creature we control. With the equipment in this deck and the new auras we want to add in, this is free real estate. If nothing else, just being an evasive knight is a big bonus. And if the name of the game is connecting, let's profit from it too. Reconnaissance Mission, Coastal Piracy, and Bident of Thassa all draw us a card whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, so why not profit from turning sideways? This is what I'd love to see blue used for in more aggressive decks like this, drawing oodles of cards. It's the best reason to play the color, so let's take advantage of it. There's also another knight that can help our other knights. Marshal of Zhalfir from March of the Machine isn't included in the base deck, but he's an anthem for your knights. Comes down early, and late game has an activated ability that can help clear the way for your knights if he himself can't connect. That's all upside. And we can't make a knight deck without including the Circle of Loyalty. This legendary artifact discounts itself by 1 for each knight we control, acts as an anthem for our knights, and makes 2/2 knights with vigilance when we cast a legendary creature. And it also has an activated ability for 4 mana to make a knight. That's just line after line after line of what we want to include in this deck. What's not to love? Why isn't it included? But I think the deck really needs a finisher. We have bodies that want to be attacking, so how do we make them enough to end the game? Well, what is a knight without True Conviction? A classic white finisher, True Conviction gives our creatures lifelink and double strike. If that's not enough to end the game, it's enough to gain us so much life it'll put us out of striking distance. And even better, if it won't win us the game on the spot, double strike doubles up all of our on-combat damage triggers, from drawing cards to putting counters on our creatures. Trust me, if this sticks around during combat, it will be game over. Can we do it even better though? Let's take a look at the upgrade. If I'm going whole hog on this list, where am I adding pricier pieces? Well, Painful Truce and Read the Bones are good on a budget, but these can easily be blue's better draw spells. Rhystic Study and Mystic Remora are go-tos in the format and can be slotted in these spots if you've got them sitting around. Take advantage of having blue in your color identity. Additionally, the swords are so good on knights. Who would have thought, really? Hearth and Home, Feast and Famine, Fire and Ice, all really great ways to get evasion and sweet on-damage effects onto your creatures. They're all a little pricey, but they're all really good. These can replace Vona, Butcher of Magan, and lackluster equipment like Sigiled Sword of Valorant pretty seamlessly. We could even be leaning heavier into equipment with Sigarda's Aid, and even the boots. But Sir Gwyn gives us knights holding weapons. It is an option here, for sure, but I don't think it's really where you should be investing your upgrades for maximum effect. But it is a build path, and while it may not be cheap or easy to get, if you really want evasion in a tribal deck, look no further than Cover of Darkness. Solely needing a reprint, this black enchantment can give all of your knights fear, meaning they can't be blocked except by black or artifact creatures. Easy to be unblockable against most decks. Here, we could cut the needlessly expensive Knight of the Last Breath to bring the curve down, along with opponents' life totals. Let me know what you think about the out-of-the-box Cavalry Charge Precon, and what you would change or add to make the deck even better. If you've been inspired, you have to hit that subscribe button, and be sure to watch these other Precon upgrade guides too. As always folks, good luck and have fun.